Hi, it's Alexis Hasselberger, time management and productivity coach. Things are changing right now in my household, and they might be for you too. You might be sending kids back to school in person. You might be going back to an office in person, maybe part time or maybe full time. And when things change, the labor at home also changes, circumstances change, and there might be different types of work to be done, right? And so when that happens, instead of just letting yourself absorb the additional workload or what's changing, it's really helpful to be intentional about these things. So think about when the circumstances change, the workload changes, and that means it's time to redistribute. It's time to look at it, to take stock, to redistribute, to see if it still makes sense. So if you are going through any kind of a transition period right now, or even if you're not, but you might want to be thinking ahead to the future, think about how the workload is changing. Is there more of one type of work and less of another to be done? I know in my house there's less dishes, right? Because there's no more kids at home eating lunch and snacks all throughout the day. But there's actually more driving because now we have to drive them to school. So workload is changing a little bit. Uh, it was time for us to take stock. That was just one example of all the different things that are changing and redistribute the workload to make sure that it still makes sense. So this is just a short and sweet video, but if you are going through some sort of transition right now in your household, whether that is because of an office change, whether maybe it's a job change, whether it is a school happening, et cetera. But if there's some sort of change in circumstances, this is a good time to take stock, look at it, and redistribute equitably. Have a conversation with other people that you live with, if you live with other people, around how to move around that work. Now, maybe you live alone. That doesn't mean that there's no redistribution that can happen, right? What about outsourcing things? Maybe things are changing in your world, and maybe you're going back to an office, and you used to be cooking yourself lunch at home, and that doesn't work anymore for you and your time. So maybe it makes sense to outsource that and to be buying lunch again, right? Think about how did the circumstances change the workload, and then what needs to be done to accommodate that so that you're not kind of slowly on the road to burnout, just absorbing more and more work. Now, if you're not on a transition point, that's fine. But one thing to think about is what are those transition points that you could anticipate? So I know for me, I'm always looking ahead to things like, my kids getting older, so I can give them more chores. That happens once a year. I'm also looking towards things like a job change for anyone that is in the household, because a job change can mean different hours, can mean, that the work has to get redistributed. We're also thinking about, when somebody enters or leaves the household. So maybe that's a new baby coming, or maybe that's a kid going off to college, or maybe it's a new roommate joining a household living situation or something like that. Think about what transitions change the work that happens in your house. And then when those happen, that's a really good time to just have a conversation, either with yourself or with everyone else that you live with, about how the work is changing and how it needs to be redistributed to make sure that it's equitable and that it feels good to everybody and that nobody is taking an undue share of that burden. So tell me, are things changing for you? And if so, what are you going to change to meet the needs of your new circumstances?
Hey, Arlie's here, the video editor. I just want to quickly say drop a like and subscribe. It helps with the YouTube algorithm, and it just be a really big help because not a lot of people that watch our videos are actually subscribed, so it'd just be a big help. We're trying to reach 400 subscribers, and it'd be great.